Welcome to Why the Artist Bleeds. I'm your host, Venus Bleeds, an artist who's trying to discuss with other artists their systems, their physical, mental, and environmental systems, how they experience mental health, patriarchy, feminism, creativity, and productivity. We are humbled by the beauty of communication and the power sharing voices has on each other. Well, because we are all coming from the same blood. We have a very special guest here, Hady Afif. A wonderful surprise. We have been collaborating since 2016, our first shoot. 17. She has great memory. I don't. I'm old. I met Hady through a lot of friends and Instagram, and we've managed to create amazing work. He was the first photographer I've worked with where I felt like I can fully be myself. And by myself, I don't mean like, yeah, I can be myself with an artist, but also like myself as in someone who gets my vision and my creative functioning. And sometimes I would look at him and be like, let's do this. And I remember we did a shoot near Zaha Hadid's building. And I told him I wanted to bend like the bridge and I wanted to be part of like one with the bridge. And I wasn't expecting anyone to understand that. But he looked at me and said, okay, he got it. He got the shot. It looked amazing. Hady is an amazing photographer. He's been working in photography and visual arts for a long time. He's now based in Dubai. Can you tell us more about your journey into photography and what inspired you to start capturing moments?
Well, thank you for the beautiful intro. I really appreciate that. Honestly, my journey into photography has been, as with every artist, it's been like a very long one. Honestly, what first inspired me, I feel like I'm obviously like very inspired by my surroundings as someone who like kind of grew up in nature. I think my first source of inspiration was nature, like landscapes mostly. And I remember like my first venture with a camera was with like some shitty BlackBerry phone like from back in the day.
Yeah.
And that's like that's essentially how I started. Like I just literally would have just like photography trips on my own. I take my phone, go around the house everywhere. Like I went with my parents. I could always kind of go off and do my own thing. And I think I found a lot of like comfort in photography, specifically in landscapes.
Yeah.
And then as I grew older, like I bought my first camera, I started to be more interested in people. And that's when I started capturing people, specifically in university, which is around the time when I met you. I think I was just meeting lots of people, and again, like that became my source of inspiration. And just like long story short, that just morphed into me just being interested in like, capturing portraits. And I think I remember we had this shoot, you and I, in like 2019. We went to Harsh, Beirut. I remember that day very clearly because I think it was my first time really doing like a full-on shoot with a film.
Right. And I remember we were doing this thing on the car and there were a bunch of like motorcycles coming and started saying like, you faggots.
Yeah. And like I think that was also shooting that with you was also like a big kind of like push out of my comfort zone, because I still am very reserved as a person, and especially when it comes to like shooting out in the wild. I've always been very reserved. I feel like oftentimes when people see my work, they often they expect to meet a person who's different than who they actually meet. Because I am reserved. I don't take a lot of space. I feel I know when to talk. I know when not to talk. Like I'm very cautious of my surroundings. But when it comes to photography, like obviously that doesn't work. So generally just working with visuals just pushes me out of that comfort zone, especially when it comes to like a shoot, like the one we did where, like I forgot what you were wearing, but you were wearing kind of like a bit of like a flashy, like a kimono, kind of like flamboyant. We were in a very like hyper masculine like setting. People were staring. They were interested, as they are. They're always intrigued. And so that was like a good push out of my comfort zone. And I remember that shoot, like I remember that day very, very clearly. It was really just like a fun, simple shoot. And I think just on a technical level, I just learned a lot because I was experimenting with film a lot at the time, which I don't do more of now, which is a shame. But yeah.
I remember, and you mentioned having photography as a way to escape. Like it kind of became like your catharsis in a way, where you were a reserved person, and then you get to like see those fantasies the minute you take out the camera. Can you talk more about how photography in that aspect could make someone that feels so alone and so reserved and so like in their head all the time and self-conscious, how could it transform you into being someone that could live that fantasy that you're talking about?
I don't think it necessarily transforms you, meaning that, again, as a person who is quite reserved, I am very camera shy. I hate being in front of the camera, as we've discussed many times. But when I am shooting with someone, like the way I direct them is quite the opposite of like reserved. So I think in a lot of ways it's really like just an expression of maybe who I want to be or how I could be or how I see myself being. So that's what I think that's actually what draws me to shoot people, and especially now that I live in a city like Dubai. My main source of inspiration is people, because you meet a lot of characters, you meet a lot of interesting people, and I think these are the people I'm drawn to. Like, obviously, like you as a subject, I'm drawn to a lot because I feel like I'm drawn to people who maybe represent what I aspire to be personally. So that kind of helps me kind of work out that.
And it's funny you say that, because me being a performer in front of the camera,
yeah,
I am also doing it because I want to be the person I aspire to. But it's more of like, we are both aspiring for a self that we both can't see in front of us. It's like, for me, when I'm in front of the camera with you, I am aspiring to be the person that we've created in our mood board, in the shoot.
100%.
So performance comes in a place where, okay, I am right now, I am channeling the person that I want to be. And you as a photographer, you're capturing that person. And that kind of archetypal feeling is what makes it so unique, because you feel like, even like when we do shoots together, most of the time I don't feel like I'm like fully, even though it feels very authentic in myself, but it almost doesn't feel related to me. Like I did a shoot with Firas Haider the other day, and I was like eating someone's heart out, and we both wanted to like showcase that message, but it's not necessarily like who I am, but like who I felt at that moment and what we were trying to feel. And it's so cool because you suddenly are like externalizing all your fantasies and dreams into this imaginary person that the crew is becoming, whether the photographer, the makeup artist, the stylist, the setting. It's like we're all contributing to like
you become the vision that you're trying to, like you live out the vision, that you live out the fantasy together. And I think and art in that sense, like I feel, is performance, because for me as a photographer, like I feel like now when you specifically talk about like the age of social media and everything, like people see you as your work. Like for example, like if someone were to look at your work, they think that you are like that 24/7, right? Like I feel like I feel like people no longer, how do I say this, like especially when your art, in an age where people no longer separate like you from your art, because it's the way we even share our art is so intrinsic to our identities as well, that people can no longer separate. So then that's like when I go back to the point of someone sees like your work and they think, oh, like Venus is Venus all the time, when I know for a fact that you are some aspects of Venus all the time, but you are not the performer all the time. And I think it's the same with when you work with visual art, when you share your work, when you put it out there. Especially, I feel like when it comes from a place of not necessarily commercial work, right? When it's a lot of work that, it's work that you do from the heart, right? It's not work that is done for someone. It's work done for you. People kind of just take that fantasy and project it onto you. So people do think that, for example, like from my work, that they think I'm so-and-so, and I'm actually like, if you actually meet me, again, like I'm quite reserved. I'm not the most talkative person in the room. And but people expect you to be that,
But like, it's so disappointing for people who have this like uphold this image of us. Like when I'm even dating sometimes, and you meet this kind of guy or girl or like people who expect you to be like the version that you present in your work or the performance that you give, sorry, and they get so disappointed when they realize that like you are not the fantasy that you create. It's not that I am not it, it's just that I can't be one. Like, we're multi-dimensional. If you see me in like eating my heart out and like bleeding all the time,
You're not doing that at home,
if
or
you're,
maybe you are.
I am, but like sometimes I also want to be like Bob the Builder. And I also, like you have such amazing fashion photography, and people like, it also happened when I used to work in photography. It was the same. Like, you go out with people and they always expect you to like take pictures of them.
Yeah. Or like they give you you're a photographer, like take a picture of us.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, I get paid.
Yeah.
And it's hard because when you're an artist and or a creative and you create archetypes, and then people only reduce you into these archetypes, it kind of feels shocking. Like, I've had people be shocked after dating me, being like, "Oh, you're not the person I thought you were." Like, newsflash, I'm a fucking human. Like, I'm not like always reciting poetry, bad poetry left and right.
No, I like your poetry. It's not bad poetry.
Thank you. But I want to know how your identity being queer and Arab, how does that like influence a bit of your work? And can you talk more about like how you influence and what influences you to maintain yourself as a queer Arab photographer?
I think that's a bit of a loaded question.
I'm sorry. We're very deep in this podcast.
No, it's a loaded question in a good way, because I feel like a lot of the times when kind of Arab and queer and / artist are put together in a sentence, people expect you to answer a certain way.
Oh, but that's so true.
Like, oh, I know. They expect like this, your strife and your struggle and your everything to be your source of everything in your life. And that's fine. It 100% is. And I feel like obviously some people have more merit and more grounds to discuss these things. But I feel like these labels just really put us in boxes that are not necessarily so helpful for our work and for us as Arabs in general, because then people only see us as that. Like, a lot of the times we pander these, like, to these identity, like to these boxes basically, to get that funding, to get that, to stand out
Passport.
in a crowd. Yeah, basically
Well,
to
but
pass more and
give me an example, because I know exactly what you're talking about, but I want to see you like give me an example of other artists who do it.
Like names?
No, I don't care. No, we're not being shady.
We're not dropping names.
I want to know, like, because in my experience, it's like, how can I say this? Sure, I survived an explosion and all that. I've done it to get my French visa. You should if you haven't. But sometimes when the entire core of your work becomes about the struggle that you don't actually really experience, like when you're a Nepo baby from a middle upper class, living in Dubai, getting funded by your parents, and all you talk about is how like your family is like, surviving through this extreme crisis, and it's like,
and like my grandfather and my great grandfather, whatever, like your whole lineage is like part of your work suddenly, when you've barely been to the homeland, you've barely lived there, you can't really even speak the language that well.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly who you're talking about.
And I can think of so many people, and again, that's not like kind of like black points against anyone, but
no,
I feel like obviously again,
it's like baiting, it's like,
it's
I'm talking
grab.
about,
it's a cash grab.
Yeah.
It's a cash grab 100%.
It's like the label said, you are 3% Arab. Okay, great. Let's capitalize on that.
100%.
That's interesting.
And what's interesting about that is that I feel like people, I would not say people in general, but people are more aware these days. Like, I think you can clock someone so clearly when they're doing that. Like,
like
it's so easy to spot a fraud when it comes to these things, right? Because you see, and I'm just gonna give an example, like in Arabic rap, for example, like you look at that scene and you can see people who, have obviously like, their art is, like it's all about their identity, it's about the roots, and that feels authentic. But then you kind of just like look at I'm just gonna say it, like the diaspora, like here in Paris or in effing Berlin, and like, oh, like we are making this Arabic fusion music and whatever, and obviously a lot of it is great and amazing, and you can just, I feel personally like, I feel like people are aware enough now to look at something like that and really just be the judge on if it's like, if it's something that should take up space from other artists who actually need it, or like if it's worth giving this artist attention.
And also, like, bitch, are you on the ground?
100%.
Like, are you on the ground?
Or do you actually care? Or did you like...
did you visit it?
Or are you just, you know... And again, this is not like, again, shade or whatever against anyone who, you know, does not necessarily have the best Arabic in the world or whatever. But I think artists who come from these backgrounds should be more aware of when to give space for other artists. Because I always see like these photography grants and whatever, and I see like this big fucking artist from like this rich family, and
who gets
not gonna say where, but no, who gets it because, you know, they're famous, they kind of use a certain event, and I'm gonna like give an example in Beirut to kind of build a reputation for themselves and so on. But
it's like gentrification,
100%. But then when you look at their kind of their background, like, oh, like your parents own this 4-story house in fucking I don't know where, and then you're grouped alongside a Syrian refugee who does similar work and a Palestinian refugee who does a similar work, and then that's, I think, where you should be more aware of. Okay, obviously, if you get something offered to you, you're not gonna be like no, but it's about knowing when to give other people space, other artists space when they need it, and not to take up too much space as an artist and take away like resources and opportunities from other artists who like really, really need it.
It's difficult when you're in an age where we see all of our peers and we know who they are, and you realize that the only thing that characterizes them all is this like insane need to be narcissistic, and it's like 100%. You can't really live anymore as an artist if you're not showing off that you're aloof and mysterious and you're unapproachable and you're in the club and you can't be talked to.
And it's tell like you all about that. Yes,
it's like this fucking like storm of like, let me show you how like hip and alternative I am by like pretending that I don't know you amongst people even though we've worked together. And I'm not talking about myself, but like when my country was going through a lot of shit, I didn't know how some people do it, because I, for example, had a show and you were there, and like 2 years ago in Beirut during like the whole post-explosion, and there was another explosion that happened in Trablus, and it was the same day, and it was like obviously not so much on the news because no one cares about people on the north apparently. And I remember having I had a merch stand and I could not at all take money from people who are coming to see work about my like queer trauma without like donating 100% of the proceeds to these families. And I'm not selling people or artists that they should do the same. But it's like, if you have an entire album about being a Palestinian refugee who like moved out of the country, or a Syrian refugee that just moved, you know, found their life, and all of your work has never been on the ground with these people, you've never donated anything for these people, you've never even spoken their language, exactly what you said, it just feels like it's baited. Tell me more, and I think we will end with this. My favorite topic, which is this pretension that supersedes you as a photographer, as a musician, as an artist, where you feel like, oh, I made a successful hit, I made something that was of quality, let me be contemptuous against every single other peer I have. Let me pretend that I'm the best person in the room. Let me pretend that I am so unapproachable I cannot be spoken to because of my highness. And you think that the more you do it, the more people will like you, because it's true. You do have people feeling challenged to talk to you more. You do have a lot of like your peers being like, oh, who is she, and like, who the fuck does she think she is, kind of vibe, which makes them kind of strive to get to know you. But like, part of it is just so pathetic, because at the end of the day you realize that these people's only validation for their work comes from putting other people down.
Yeah.
So what's your experience with that? And tell me if you believe in that fiasco.
Okay, I live in a city where most artists have to be influencers, or else they're not taken seriously. So I can talk a lot about that.
Zumbai.
Yeah. Listen, I think a lot of it has to do with obviously social media. Because, you know, again, I think I spoke about it before. I think if your work is not mostly published through traditional means, and by traditional means I mean like if you don't make like pavilion art, or you don't make, I don't know, like just like if you're in like an artist who publishes their work online and that's like your main source of, I'd say like revenue, or that's your main source of reception, and obviously that kind of like seeps into other more traditional means, then social media is like a very big part, I think, even artists who obviously are more established within these institutions that I'm talking about. Like I think social media is if you want to be an artist these days, you have to have a presence there, and that's like a double-edged sword, obviously, because that again becomes a thing where you become part of your brand, like you as your person becomes part of your work. Like people no longer see your work, and there's, okay, we can have like this whole intellectual debate about separating the artist from the art and whatever, but like these days, because of the ways we share our work, people just see us as an extension of our work, and they project these fantasies onto us, as we just described. So I feel like people have to, like online, act like influencers all the time, especially, and I see it with lots of like very talented artists. Like you have to be the coolest person every single day. You have to be the most interesting person every single day. You have to show that you're working on something every single day. And it's because it's a saturated place. You have to stand out all the time. So I think that's what drives people to always kind of like perform online and, you know, be this and that and put others down just to shine more. And
it's pathetic because it only makes you look like you're essentially like insecure about your work.
100%, because I do feel like, and I've met so many amazing artists who do not do that, like obviously who are online, and you know, like any artist who pretends that they're above social media is full of shit completely. Like
or above anything.
To be completely or above anything. But specifically this whole apprehension about like sharing my work on social, like unless your parents are millionaires, you have to start somewhere. Yeah. So
but not to be shady, but like I'm so humbled by just my work and working with collaborators like you, where you know I'm in it for the win. Like, and sorry, not for the win. I'm in it for the experience. Like as cringy as that sounds, I love making images with you and 100%. With Firas and music, and if you can't tap into that, then that doesn't make you an artist. That makes you a businesswoman or a man or whatever you identify as. But if you want to be part of the art club, whatever club that is, please let's not make it like secluded. But like if you want to be an artist, and I keep telling this to people, you can't try to be like, it's just it just has to come from a passion and love for you becoming what you are creating and identifying with the fantasies that you are trying to create with your crew.
Yeah,
that's what it's about. I don't care if we have 300,000 followers. It's not going to make me better of an artist. It's probably a worse.
Better. Yeah. 100%.
It'll probably going to make it worse because it's going to be diluted in that.
And like one thing about social media, and I see this a lot, is that I think especially with music, I don't know why with music specifically, but you know, you see this artist, they do this thing, they get so much hate, but they keep going at it.
Yeah,
like quantity, and then suddenly they build an audience and they get these deals and everything, and again, that's a double-edged sword, because you know, like just because you put so much quantity out there and you pump so much of your work out there, I think a lot of it is just like exposure that people just get accustomed, and you know, with more exposure people are like, okay, this is good, regardless of, you know, what you consider good or not good. But that's like the double-edged sword, because you know, it could be a matter of quantity where you're just in people's face all the time, and that makes you, you know, the bigger artist or like the biggest artist in the world or whatever. And then
Taylor Swift.
Sure, yeah, that's a great example actually. And then there's you know, people who a lot of artists who I've met, who I've befriended, who I find a lot of comfort in knowing, because you know, a lot of them, you know, they're amazing artists, they do amazing work, but they're not, you know, the biggest influencer online. They're not, you know, like the loudest person in the room. They're not trying to sell themselves 24/7. They're not, you know, at like every event, every pop-up.
But when you work with them, you feel changed.
100%.
That's a good art. When you like when we work together, like even doing this podcast right now, I feel different. Like I've learned something new. I've changed as a person, and that's what characterizes for me like good work, is when someone lives and breathes like their vision, and they're just willing to share it, like, because of love.
Yeah.
I've met incredible, like, I went to Primavera this year, and I've met like all these, like, I met Madonna's daughter. We were hanging out with Sega. You can tell many of these people were just there just because, like, they wanted to look like they're there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to talk a lot about people or artists in general, but the only thing I can say about, like, someone like Madonna's Lola, she was that kind of girl for me the whole time, trying to make it seem like she's the person that she needs to be worshipped. But in reality, when you see the show, the artist isn't there. It's like just a bunch of people working all together just to, like, make it happen. But, like, she was just there, not even trying her best, like, just coasting around. Anyway, this has been amazing. I'm going to have to let you go. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Same.
So happy to have you in Paris.
Same. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. I hope I was not awkward throughout this whole interview.
Absolutely not.
Just, like, talking under my breath and being mysterious and aloof.
Let's just pretend we're mysterious and aloof, because that's how it goes. No, but I hope to have you here again, and I hope to have you in this city more often. And the next guests are going to be very, very, very cool.
I actually I'm putting that out there. I cannot believe I will be alongside any of these people, because I love all of them so much. I love their work. I don't love them. I don't know them. I love their work so much. Shout out to whoever is going to sit here next, because it's going to be great.
We'll see you next time. Thank you for reintroducing the new season, I guess. But I like to take it slow, because that's how I function. I don't like to mass produce. I'm not like a 72 variant bitch, like that big pop girl we all know. This is it. And I'll see you next time. I love you so much. And let's go party.
Let's do it. We're going to party after this.
Bye.